Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm the Reverend Sara LaWall. I use she, her pronouns, and it is my great honor to serve this beloved community as your minister. We are a spiritually diverse, justice-seeking religious community with one great aim: proclaiming the power of love at the center of our living tradition. Love of neighbor, love of ourselves, and love for our planet. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, however you identify, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, whatever doubts you carry with you, you are welcome here. I'm joined this morning by Debra Smith, serving as our celebrant, and our special guest musician this morning, Michael Mandrell, not a stranger to this congregation. He always looks us up every year when he's passing through Boise, and we were just remarking that this is the first time I will get to experience Michael's music, as I've been out of the pulpit every other time he's been here. Thank you, Michael, for being with us this morning. Let's welcome our online community, those of us that are worshiping on Zoom. Good morning, friends. It's so good to see you. We invite you, of course, to turn your cameras on if you're ready and able for just a moment so we can see you on our screens and welcome you. And even if you don't have your camera, we can still welcome you. Hi, Miriam and Dave. Diane, it's good to see you. Jim and Sheila and Mary and Odell and Edith, all of your beautiful faces up there. Good morning, Helen. Good morning, Nona and Dawn and Aaron, Logan, and Gwen. Thank you all for joining us. You remind us that we worship together as one beloved community beyond the walls of this sanctuary. Another special welcome to our newcomers, those of you who are joining us for the first or second time. We know it takes a lot of courage to check out a new community. It takes a lot of courage to come back again and keep coming, and we're delighted that you have chosen us. We invite you to introduce yourselves to us after the service during our hospitality time in our room or online in the chat at any time so that we can warmly welcome you. We invite you to fill out our newcomer forms, which you can find in each entryway, and we'll post a link in the chat so that we can keep you posted with everything that is happening in this fellowship. And goodness, we continue to be a very busy community with lots of extraordinary opportunities and programs and events to connect and learn and grow together. For our newcomers, we run an Inquirer series for newcomers, and that will continue this week with Membership 101. So you are invited to join us down the hall here for that series, designed to introduce you both to this fellowship, to each other, and to Unitarian Universalism. I do have a couple of large community announcements that I want to share with everyone. First, I hope you read your emails, and those of you that are on Facebook, but I am excited to introduce to you that we have hired a brand new director of religious education. Travis, you want to stand up? That's Travis Porter back there. We're delighted to have Travis with us. He wrote his own welcome letter, which is in your inboxes. Travis will be shadowing Emily for the next couple of weeks to learn the ropes, and then we'll have a more formal, longer, proper welcome and introduction and celebration of Travis in a few weeks in November. Sunday, November 3rd, I want to remind and invite all of you to the town hall hosted by your board of directors, Sunday, November 3rd, after worship with food as an enticement. It's a really important conversation that we're beginning a discernment process to talk about the future of the Chelan property, which is the strip of land behind us, behind the grove out there, to think about how we want to use it and what its needs are and our needs are as we move into the future. So we hope that you'll join us for the beginning of that conversation on November 3rd. Each week we gather and we center ourselves by lighting our flaming chalice. the symbol of our free faith, a beacon of hope, love, and justice. As we light the chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you in our online community, if you have a chalice or a candle nearby, to light it with us, and then share in the chat where it is you have lit your chalice this morning. With our collective chalices lit in all of our worship spaces, I invite us all to rise in body or spirit, join together in singing our gathering hymn this morning, number 352 in the gray hymnal, words also on the screen, Find a Stillness.
We come from and live on land considered sacred by many indigenous peoples, known as Bannock, Shoshone, Paiute, and many other tribes that lived here sustainably for thousands of years, inhabiting a vast region including much of Idaho.
We recognize the long history of the land, long before colonization, and acknowledge the ancient tribes whose names have been lost in history.
With this acknowledgement, we wish to demonstrate our commitment to dismantling the legacies of settler colonialism. We honor Indigenous peoples' connection to the land and support their right to sovereignty.
In the challenges of these truths, may we move through the world bringing justice in every way that we can, listening to the truths spoken to us by Native American peoples, making space for them to re-inhabit this place, and giving them back the resources they need to heal their communities.
Our spiritual theme for this month of October is the practice of deep listening. And today's service invites us to consider listening to the mystery that some call God. Whatever God means for you, even if it means little to nothing, or even if it creates a gulf of uncertainty, even if the word makes you throw up your hands in exasperation or reverently fold them in your lap, I invite you to find that depth of being within you, among all of us, or beyond us, or all three, and open up to the practice of deep listening, to the great awe and wonder and spirit of mystery that some call God. As we enter into this time of worship together this morning, I invite us all to take a breath together. Fill your body with breath Breathe, knowing our breath connects us to one another, to our bodies, to this planet. Our breath offers us an opportunity to find that stillness, to tune in to our spiritual center, to listen deeply to our heart's own longing. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-riven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream.
Our call to worship this morning is adapted from the Reverend Scott Taylor. Come back to your center, it calls to you. Return to the quiet, it whispers. The quiet we long for, and that longs for us. From this stillness, always a voice arises, if we let it. So come, let us listen once again. Let us find that flame inside that guides us back home. Come, let us worship together.
With our promise of building beloved community, we celebrate our commitments to being a multi-generational community, a community of generosity, and a community of care and connection. In that spirit, I'd like to invite all of our young people down front for our time for all ages. Good morning. Hi, good morning. It's good to see everyone. Who can remind us all what our theme is for this month? What's our theme for this month? Remember the first Sunday? Yeah, Amelia. The conch shell, yeah. And what was the conch shell teaching us the first Sunday? Anyone? Chris, you want to give it a stab? I wasn't here that day. Our theme for this month is deep listening. And that first Sunday with the conch shell, we talked about how we listen to ourselves. And then last week, we talked about listening to community, listening to the voices of beloved community, especially those voices that haven't really been listened to very often. And this week, we're talking about listening to spirit, mystery, God, the universe. There's a lot of different words for something like God. How many of you have heard the word God before? What does the word God mean to you? Do you have a thought, Amelia? What does the word God mean to you? Whenever we celebrate people who have died? Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful reflection. A lot of us think about God in that time too. What does God mean to you? Anybody else want to give us an answer? You know what else some people call God? Perhaps you have heard of the Force. Right? Think about how the Force works. How many of you are Star Wars fans? Yeah? Think about how the Force works. You're right. You're calling upon that power that lives within and without to help you get through the hard times and the lightsaber battles and defeat evil. That's a pretty good explanation for God, in my opinion. We're going to watch a story together, a beautiful story. Oh, I forgot to bring the hard copy of the book in here with me, but you can see it up there on the screen. This is called In God's Name, and it was written by Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso, and Rabbi Sasso was one of the first women to be ordained as a rabbi in her tradition. And she wrote this beautiful book, and there's this beautiful video of multiple voices reading the book and looking at it together, so I thought we would watch it together.
What is God's Name? By Sandy Eisenberg Sasso, illustrated by Phoebe Stone. After God created the world, all living things were given a name. But no one knew the name for God. So each person looked for God's name. The farmer called God Source of Light. The man who tended sheep called God
Shepherd.
The tired soldier called God
Maker of peace.
The woman who took care of sick people called God Healer. The young woman who nursed her baby called God Mother. The young man who held his baby's hand called God
Father.
And the child who was lonely called God Friend. All the people called God by different names. Each person said, "My name for God is best. My name for God is the best." But no one listened. Then one day, all the people came together. They knelt by a lake that was like a mirror, God's mirror. They looked and saw their own faces. They saw the faces of all the others. At that moment, the people knew that all their names for God were good. All at once, all together, they called God One. God heard and was very happy.
I love that story. I love all the voices in that story, all the different voices telling us that there are so many different names for God, and none are wrong. And we live in a world where lots of people like to fight about the name for God. And what's really lovely about our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition is that we also acknowledge that there are lots of folks among us who don't believe in a God, who there's no name for God in their lives, or lots of folks among us who just don't know. And that all of that is good, and all of that is beautiful, and all of that helps us in our own search for truth and meaning, and in the deep listening to whatever it is that helps us connect with the depth of all being. And that's our story for today. So I hope you remember that there are so many different names and no name and question marks for God, and all of that is welcome here. Let's stand and sing our community blessing together before we run off to your religious exploration classes.
When we give, we say yes to the natural cycle of abundance in our lives, and we say yes to building beloved communities within and beyond our walls. We commit ourselves to do work for justice and compassion for all people and our earth. Today we share those gifts with our plate partner, the Shoshone-Paiute tribes of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, as an expression of that commitment and living out our faith in the world. I invite the ushers to come forward. Our offering will be gratefully received.
you, Michael. As our ushers bring our offering gifts forward, I invite us all to join together in the collective blessing of our offering. We bless these gifts, so freely given. May generosity always be our companion as we walk the holy path toward ever greater compassion. Thank you. Each week, we take some time to be present to the many joys and sorrows and losses among us, to deeply listen to one another in our own hearts, that we might lift the burden for each other and receive the blessing of beloved community. And it is through our sharing with one another that we forge deep bonds of connection. We begin by sharing these joys and sorrows with those of you gathered today. First, congratulations to our own Scott Smith, who won the Collaborator for Success Award at the Idaho Conference on Refugee Resettlement this past weekend. Congratulations, Scott. And we hold in our hearts Helen Hendricks, who had an accident during a trip to visit her brother, tripping over his oxygen tube. Although we saw her with us today on Zoom, so we're glad you're there, Helen. Even if you're having a difficult time and you had to cut your trip short, she said, we hold you in our hearts and thoughts for quick and swift healing. And for Becky Gruff and family, who shares that Becky's sister Frankie's boyfriend Russ Winson died on September 8th, and that many of you long-timers might remember Russ as one of the longtime faithful dishwashers for the auction at many of those in-person auctions in the before times. And would you please keep Frankie and her family in your thoughts and prayers. If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to speak their name aloud or write them in the chat that we might hold them with you. May the arms of this community hold all our joys and sorrows, those named and those that remain silent and close to our hearts. May we feel the grace in the room, be surrounded by the spirit of life and love, with a warmth to celebrate the joys and a gentleness to soothe our aching hearts. Breathe with me. Fill your body with breath. Breathe with this beloved community filled with loving kindness. Breathe with wholeheartedness. Listen to what is calling you in the silence. Blessed be.
Our reading this morning is Holding It All by Barbara Peskin. Thou, I smile when I say it. Thou, meaning all that is inside me and outside me. Sometimes a tree, sometimes mountains, or the running doe, or the leaping heart of a finch held between my palms, or a child's hand no bigger than a tulip flower, with no space in it yet for fear, resting in my own. Thou that listens to our tentative and doubting dreams. Thou, hear us into certain song, how we are touched by the lives of our neighbors and kin, by their sorrows, healings, and hopes. In silence we carry with us. All day long we whisper the names of our people, broken and healing, with us and separated, struggling and reborn. May we all be held by someone, by something, something like hands enfolding the pulse and flutter of a bird, gently, carefully, and slowly opening. Thou, let it be.
Beautiful, Michael. Thank you so much. Back in the before times, I was part of a planning team putting together the multi-faith Thanksgiving worship service to be held at the Cathedral of the Rockies downtown. Now, this service had been a long-standing tradition in the city. It was in its 36th year. But this was a newer team of planners, and it was at a new location, and we were intent on making it as multi-faith, truly multi-faith, and as welcoming as possible. And around the table at this planning session, mostly clergy and a few lay leaders representing a variety of faiths, Muslim, Jewish, Hare Krishna, all the mainline Protestants. And we had Mormons, and me, the Unitarian Universalist. And as we were putting together the order of service and liturgy, specifically discussing the prayer of thanksgiving, someone enthusiastically piped up, I think it was one of the Methodists, "Let's include several different names for God to represent our faiths." Beautiful idea. We'd already had the uncomfortable conversation that Jesus could not, in fact, be included in a multi-faith service that involved Jews and Hare Krishnas. But we all agreed upon the obvious names for God, those represented around the table especially, Yahweh, Allah, God, of course, even Creator. But that's where it stopped, until I chimed in as humbly as possible. I always tread carefully at these things, as I am often the most radical, liberal, religious person in the room. And so, it's very kind of you. It's not always a comfortable place. But I offered up spirit of life, source of all, ground of being, love, oneness, that which holds all, mystery. I tried not to go on longer. I think I stunned them into a few minutes of silence until someone remarked upon how many different names I'd shared. I said, that's what happens when you serve a faith where not everyone agrees about the nature or even existence of God. I think that statement stunned the Mormons. And it can be really tricky and complicated to talk about God or spirit or even mystery, let alone about deep listening to those things in a community where we do share so many different ideas and visions and questions about the depth of connection to all that is or is not. I'd hoped in that moment I hadn't come across as too pushy. I do worry about that in interfaith spaces sometimes. But this is the one of the things that I love most about our Unitarian Universalist faith. It is what drew me to Unitarian Universalism as someone who came from a Jewish family on one side and a mixed Protestant family on the other. In our expansive theology and diversity of beliefs, God, goddess, many gods, no God, I don't know about God, or I'm not sure. All of those phrases and names we use to express ideas about God, all of them help me tune in and listen more deeply. Just saying all of those different names aloud, mystery, source of all, the force, does something to me, like a reorientation of my spirit and my inner self, opening me up to the deep love and deep wisdom and deep knowing, that still small voice which lives within and beyond. We don't necessarily need to have a name for this feeling and that inner knowing. We don't even have to know exactly what it is. That's why I like the word mystery so much, because it makes space for and welcomes all the unknowns. But I know that when I look out my window and see the shock of the bright red maple tree across the street, towering against the tall blue sky with the foothills behind it, I feel something deep and stirring and grounding within me, a kind of knowing and longing all at the same time. The early Gnostics described God similarly as the achievement of self-knowledge and the true source of all divine power, naming it the depth of all being. In fact, some Gnostics argued that there is no separation from God. Self-knowledge is knowledge of God. In the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, we hear Jesus says, "For he who has not known himself has known nothing, but he who has known himself has at the same time already achieved knowledge of the depth of the all." For the Gnostics, the self and the divine are identical. That depth of all being, the source of authority, the essence of God, of spirit, being expressed to each individual, each of us, a source of divine power. So then listening to God is listening to oneself. Or listening to oneself is listening to God. How might that wisdom change how you listen? To spirit, to source, to life, to mystery. There is great power in the idea that we can experience and express the source of spiritual authority in our own lives. And this idea is deeply integral to our Unitarian Universalist faith, because we recognize that truth and revelation come from many different sources of wisdom, including our individual and communal experience. We speak of this wisdom, the source of wisdom, as the direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Our transcendentalist ancestors felt the same, inspiring this source of truth, craving a theological space that centered and even cultivated more intense personal spiritual experience. They saw divinity and God everywhere, most especially in nature. They rejected pure empiricism and instead affirmed intuition and mystery, elevating the subjective over the objective. And theirs was a movement that grew out of and also pushed back against Unitarianism of the time, with its overwhelming rationalism and focus on intellectual reason. The Transcendentalist movement, including the likes of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau and Margaret Fuller, Louisa May Alcott, among others. This movement offered an alternative, a parallel practice of Unitarianism for people to discover that depth of all being, their own divine self, their own personal spirituality, what many of them at the time called God. And God is such a tiny word for capturing something so immense and ethereal and diverse. It's been pulled and twisted and shaped and flattened by people and religious institutions for centuries. It's lost that expansive meaning it once carried for people like the Gnostics and Transcendentalists. I still use the word. I tend to use it as a kind of cultural shorthand, knowing that when I say God, people will ascribe their own thoughts and beliefs to the word, beliefs which aren't anywhere near my own. But to use my own words would mean subjecting people to a sermon-length description. And even then, sometimes words are not enough to capture what it feels like to know and to listen to it, to that depth of being, that mystery, source, nature. I certainly know that music that we've been listening to this morning captures that as much for me, if not more than words. Theologian Paul Tillich suggests the depth of being need not be called God. You can call it nature, humanity, cosmos, goodness, the force. What is important is that it is accessible and meaningful for you. Tillich writes, the name of the infinite and inexhaustible depth and ground of our being is God. That depth is what the word God means. And if that word has not much meaning for you, translate it and speak of the depths of your life, of the source of your being, of your ultimate concern, of what you take seriously without any reservation. Perhaps in order to do so, you must forget everything traditional you have learned about God, perhaps even the word itself. Speak of the depths of your life. Speak of the source of your being. Speak of your ultimate concerns. And then get quiet. Find some stillness. As Reverend Gary Kowalski says, listen to the silences between the words. Listen to the vast, undifferentiated, nameless wonder. Seek the essence. Let it carry you. That is how to listen to the mystery that some call God. In our contemporary culture, with its loud demands for more, that internal source of wisdom can get easily lost or drowned out by the noise of our lives. We so rarely allow ourselves the opportunity to speak to the depths of our lives, to crack open our souls to discover the treasure of divinity, to access that divine light that lives within each of us. How do we find that still small voice when there is so much competing noise? What clamors keep you from hearing it? I know I struggle to find those quiet moments and places where I might hear those ultimate concerns and experience the depth of all being. I try to grab them wherever I can, sometimes just staring at the fall leaves outside my window for a few extra minutes, or lingering to bask in the light of the recent full moon, or even just noticing the blessing of warm water washing over my hands while standing at the kitchen sink. Sometimes that's enough. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron reminds us, no matter what comes along, we're always standing at the center of the world in the middle of sacred space. And everything that comes into that circle and exists with us there has come to teach us what we need to know. Sometimes all we have is a few minutes, a few deep breaths. But sometimes that is enough to listen and to know that God, whatever you imagine God to be, the universe, to know that God is listening too. May it be so. In the spirit of this practice of deep listening, we've invited ourselves into listening to God, to mystery, to wonder. I want to invite us all for our time of prayer and meditation to take part in creating a community prayer together. I'll offer a prompt, a line to you, and any of you who is moved to speak, just raise your hand to offer a second line to the prompt, a response to that prompt, and Debra will bring the microphone. And then a next line and the next line and so on, and I'll capture our prayer as we go along and then have a moment where we read it back. I read it back to all of us together. So the opening line, the prompt for our spontaneous community prayer today is this: listening to the mystery I hear. Listening to the mystery I hear.
My heart song.
My heart song.
Music.
Music.
Listening to the mystery, I hear music.
After silence, that which comes closest to expressing the inexpressible is music.
After silence, the thing that comes closest to expressing the inexpressible is music. What do you hear?
Children laughing.
I hear children laughing.
One leaf falling.
I hear one leaf falling.
The deep blue sea.
The deep blue sea.
Water flowing.
Water flowing.
This spirit of love that unites us all.
I hear the spirit of love that unites us all.
The summer's first crickets.
I hear the summer's first crickets.
Hope for the future.
I hear hope for the future.
A child's giggle.
I hear a child's giggle.
The immense responsibility of humans.
I hear the immense responsibility of humans.
I hear a sense of deep longing.
I hear a sense of deep longing.
I invite you to join me in this spirit of prayer, to listen to this prayer we have created together. Spirit of life and love, God of many names and no name. Listening to the mystery, we hear our heart's song. We hear music, that thing that comes close to expressing the inexpressible. Music. Listening to the mystery, we hear a child's giggle, children laughing, the summer's first crickets. Listening to the mystery, we hear one leaf falling. We hear water flowing, waters of the deep blue sea calling us. Listening to the mystery, we hear that sense of deep longing, that hope for the future, that immense responsibility that lies before us. Listening to the mystery, let us hear the spirit of love that unites us all. In the name of all that is holy, we pray. Amen. Amen. That was beautiful, friends. Thank you. And now we get to sing about the mystery that we hear. Some of those very words that you expressed, we're going to sing together. So I invite us to rise and body your spirit. We're singing together hymn number 30, Over My Head. Now, when we get to the end, I'm going to prep you for this now. We're going to sing 4 verses on the screen, but this is a zipper song. So you get to throw out some words to us. So I'll invite you when we sing, after we sing the 4 verses, to throw out words we have not yet sung. And we'll add a few more verses of our own together as a community. We'll do the very best we can, Sue, to follow you. Let's try that. Here we go, over my head. Over my head, belonging. I feel belonging in the air. You gotta say it real fast. Over my head, I feel belonging in the air. Over my head, I feel belonging in the air. There must be God somewhere. Let's end with love. Over my head. Thank you. We could just go on singing that all day long. I'm sure you'll be singing it all day long. I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our closing blessing. As we go out into this week, let us remember to listen to the music in the air, to find the stillness, to speak to the depths of your life, to hear the depth of all being and listen to the mystery that some call God. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.